Action! I'm thrilled to interview Valeria Sweet today. Valeria is an American actress and award-winning filmmaker. She is fluent in Russian as well as can speak Spanish and French. Valeria produces, directs, and stars in her soul-made dramas and mystery thrillers. Her upcoming films and series are Once on a Blue Moon, Contenders of the Lust Will, and Hell for Love. In addition to scripted content, Valeria has published 4 books. Please welcome Valeria Sweet. Welcome, Valeria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you so much for coming. It's been a long journey of our friendship, I would say. We started way before the pandemic, and then so many things happened. You've done so many projects and written books, a lot of books actually since then. We're going to talk about all of this in this conversation, but let's start with young Valeria. Let's talk about how did you grow up, and when was the moment when you decided or realized or even just tried to do something creative?
I was born in a city of Kazan. It's, in Russia, but it's interesting because it's within an autonomous Republic of Tatarstan. It's its capital. So to this day, I am still learning how it stands out and how it's different being from there and being from Russia. I used to think it's all the same. And then when I moved to LA and I met more people who speak Russian from somewhere else, they were like, oh, Kazan, that's not really Russian. I'm like, well, no, it is, or I would say things that I thought were Russian, but they were actually Tatar that made its way into Russian, slang in Kazan. And for example, Aida pashli means let's go in Russian, but I'll say it here and people are like, what are you saying? I don't understand. And then I was starting to understand that's so interesting that where I grew up was actually so different. So I was born there and I honestly had a very beautiful childhood. It wasn't filled with a bunch of riches or anything, but I had everything that I needed. I didn't have a lot of toys, but I didn't know that I could have a lot of toys, and I was actually always creative. I wanted to be so many different creative things. I wanted to be a singer first. I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted, to be an artist. I created my fashion line, and then I made my friends do a fashion show several times, and I would put together outfits. And then I started creating different episodes for TV shows. So whatever my favorite TV show was at the time, Buffy or Charmed, I was okay, let's have this episode, but let's have a different characters in there. And you play this and you play this. So I was basically directing and kind of writing, creating at that time and acting. And I didn't know, I was kind of playing with all these, but I didn't have any way of knowing that that's an actual job when I was little, nor that I had any role models at that time. And I wouldn't actually until way later. But it was something that I definitely was starting to do very young.
What about your parents? How were they reacting to your multi-passionate creative endeavors?
When I was little?
Yeah.
My biggest supporter was one of my grandmas. She probably knew that I was going to be very creative, and she encouraged everything that I did. So when I was at her house, I was in heaven because I could do anything and everything, and she would really just applaud and make sure that I was encouraged. My parents, I don't think they realized how creative I was because they were working more. So I was spending more time with my grandmas. But I know that when I was in kindergarten, there was a picture that I drew of my parents and me going skiing. And my kindergarten teacher, she pulled my mom aside and she's like, oh my God, she drew this photo, you need to really, put her into like a school or something to do it. And my mom looked at this picture and she was like, that's interesting that she drew us all together because we went without her. But my kindergarten teacher, she loved the picture so much, she wouldn't even give it to my mom. She framed it and kept it for herself.
Oh, wow.
I know. To this day, I'm like, why would she keep? But then I had friends who were more, or who I thought were more creative than me. So they were the ones who were the artist, you know, the singer, the piano player. So I was at the time the dancer, so I went to the dance school instead of any of that. It's interesting how we start out and somebody just decides like, you're this and you're this and you can't be this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how it was when I was growing up. So it wasn't until I moved to like North Carolina and was growing up there that I actually knew like, oh, okay, so I can draw.
Mm-hmm.
I can also draw. Like my friend is not the only person who can draw. So I ended up going and getting my BFA in art and graphic design. So
nice. At what age did you move to North Carolina?
I was 12, but I actually knew way before. Like I always kind of knew that I was going to move to America. It was like not a shock to me. Like everything I read, everything I did, everything I watched was American. I mean, dubbed in Russian, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I was like so excited.
Well, let's take a little detour, or so to speak. Your experience watching movies in Russian, like dubbed movies, basically watching them in Russian, the American movies or British movies or whatever. And I had the same experience. I used to watch movies in Russian, dubbed, and it was normal. I would even, go and download them from somewhere in dubbed version because I couldn't speak English at that time, or like couldn't at least speak it in a way so I understand it. I don't have to tense my brain. But then when I moved here and I started speaking better, I rewatched not all of the films, but all of the ones that I loved. And it was like a Matrix experience, like a Neo, and I woke up in the real world. How was this experience for you when you start watching films in English?
So my first movie that I actually watched in English in the movie theater was Scooby-Doo with like Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I was actually very surprised because I understood most of it. Like maybe 82%. I was 12, so I think it was just normal. Like a normal transition. Like I wanted to be American, so I can see what you mean by your experience. I didn't have the same experience because I don't know if I would have known what to look for. It was just something like, okay, well now I'm going to be watching, things in American language, English. So yeah, but thank you for sharing your experience. That is so interesting.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and I cannot go back now. Exactly like in Matrix, I cannot go and start watching dubbed movies because now they feel so unprofessional in a sense because it's not matching like the emotional life of the actor who performed the role in the movie does not really match the voice, and there's a disconnect. So I cannot really connect to them anymore as I used to. So what was the first English lesson that you took? Or when did you start learning English?
The first English class, quote unquote, that I was taking was, I was like 5 or 6 years old. And my parents took me to like this cultural center, like DK, Dvorец культуры. And yeah, I had like an hour class a week or something. I remember learning words like lion, sun, hello, how are you? So I definitely remember like that was also the first language that I was learning because I also was learning Tatar when I started school. So I was learning like main languages at the same time. But then English started in second grade. That was like almost every day. We had a class that was really intensive in math and English. So yeah, we had English like 5 times a week out of 6 or something crazy.
When do you think you start actually speaking English, like with real people, with real English speakers?
So when I moved to North Carolina, my first culture shock was that the British English that we were learning in Russia
Yeah.
was not the, the American English, and definitely not the Southern, American
Uh-huh.
that I encountered in North Carolina. So I remember people would talk to me and I have no idea what they're saying. First of all, they're speaking, with a Southern drawl. They have their own slang. Like they don't say like I want to. They say I wanna. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going. I'm gonna. Which is what I say now. Like it's hard for me to go back. Um, but I remember that it was very hard to start speaking. Like once I moved to North Carolina, I definitely kind of like withdrew from people for a minute. I wanted to be around people all the time, but it was hard for me to like overcome speaking because I was so afraid to be wrong or like I remember I had a pen pal even in Russia. Because so my mom and I moved because she got married,
Mm-hmm.
and my dad, American dad, he was like so caring that he had me have a pen pal, which was his friend's granddaughter. So I would ride with her when I was still in Russia, and which made my, transfer over here easier too. But when I first met her and her brother, and they were speaking fast, and I didn't know what they were saying. And I was like I remember having a dictionary with me, trying to like at least say something. And then, of course, there's cultural differences where I'm trying to say something, like we're a game I'm trying to play, and they don't know what it is, or like remotely close to anything that's here. So I remember having that and being afraid of that going forward. So I would speak to my immediate family, like, my dad and my family in English. And actually, my grandma, she was teaching me English. Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I would come over a couple of times a week, and we would watch movies in English. Like I remember watching It's a Wonderful Life with her because it was her favorite movie. And yeah, so it was tough. But then I started school. I started eighth grade, and I was still very shy, but I had a couple of friends there, so I would like speak to them, and I would speak back when like somebody would speak to me, but I didn't really start conversations. But later on, I overcame that, and now I speak to everybody, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah. Well, now you speak not just one, you speak also Spanish and French, as I know, right?
Yeah, as we were talking earlier, yeah. So Spanish was interesting to me because I first started it in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was a part of Organization Nosotros here in LA. And so, but I've always liked being around Spanish speakers. I think they have a lot in common with Russian people, actually.
Mm.
And Spanish to me was so easy to learn as a Russian because they also have like, he, she, and like
Mm.
endings and stuff like that. With French, I actually had the biggest fear of speaking French
Oh.
because my Russian grandma was a French teacher, and she kind of made fun of me if I said something wrong,
Uh-huh.
which was not a very nice thing to do. But so it like gave me this like block for the rest of my life. And even like when I went to like, because I've been to France several times, like I've been to Paris, French Riviera. When I was in Paris on my own, I tried, like, I definitely remembered a couple of phrases, and I was like trying to say at least something if they didn't know English. But then I watched Emily in Paris over the Christmas break, and I was like, you know what? I will try. So I I started on Duolingo, and I took their like assessment of like where to place me, and I actually placed out of level 1, and I was like, how's that possible? And then it came back to me how much French I actually knew from when I was little, because my mom and my grandma would speak it at home sometimes, and there are like some words that I'm like, oh my God, like this is my childhood, like je voudrais or like chapeau, like I know these words and like some phrases, and so it's been actually a really gratifying experience learning French.
Yeah, French is, I also interested in French. I was learning it. It's fun language, and being from St. Petersburg, it's kind of like one of three languages that people always learning. Like it's either English, Italian, German, or French.
Wow. So
I would say
four.
even less so Italian. Yeah, less so Italian. So it's French, English, and German. Those are three languages. Like they even have specialized schools for that. But French, I always love because I just like the way it sounds. And again, after Emily in Paris, it also reignited my passion for French.
Why are we not friends on Duolingo?
No, it's a beautiful language, definitely worth learning. And you can speak it not just in France, you can speak it in Canada, right?
Right.
And a bunch of other countries as well.
Yeah, I haven't been, I've been to Toronto, but I didn't really encounter French there. But there are some parts of it that are like specific, right?
Yeah. I think it's I'm not sure, but I think in Canada it's like official language in some
in Montreal,
places.
right?
Montreal, maybe, yeah. Do you have like a favorite French word or like a sentence that you like to say that you can
I was
say?
talking about the other day. My favorite word, like I just actually said it, but for some reason, chapeau, like the hat. I'm so fascinated with it. Like, I don't know, it sounds really good to me. Like in English, there's this word citadel that sounds really good to me. I don't know. I just really like that. I think it just reminds me so much of childhood. And like in Russia, everyone's always like, "Where are you at?" "Один шапку." So my grandma and my mom would say chapeau. So brings warm memories.
Oh yeah. And there are a lot of like in Russian, there are a lot of French words too, and the Russian authors, as you know, wrote some sentences in French without any translation in books, in Russian language books, which is fascinating to me. And maybe that's why I'm more close to French than any other language, because of that. Because it's kind of like, especially in St. Petersburg, people used to speak French in St. Petersburg a lot, kind of like it considered like a fancy language to know. Like if you speak French, you're cool. In a sense.
Yeah.
At
and
that
back
time.
in like 1800s, it was some people's like primary language. Like they didn't even know Russian as well.
And I think like every other book in Russian has like the story. Every story in Russian that around that time, that takes place around that time, have a French tutor who comes to the family or something like this.
Right.
So it was proof that this is the proof that French was quite common. Well, let's move to your projects, the things that you've done so far. And let's start with Contenders of the Last Will. You had a book party that is related to this project, and you made a trailer. Tell us more about this project.
First of all, thank you so much for coming to the book launch.
Of course.
And thank you for reading the book. So Contenders is the project that I've been working on for a while. Like I first got the idea for it in the fall of 2016. Like I remember being on film sets and thinking like, I want to do more than acting. Like I want to write, I want to direct, and I want to do all this, right? Make my own projects. I had this idea for Contenders. I started writing it. Like part of it came from my high school experiences and like different relationships, different friendships. And yeah, I just started writing like different scenes, and then it all kind of came together in a pilot, and we ended up filming a trailer for the pilot. And we pitched it around town, and it got some buzz, but everybody would ask like, oh, do you have the IP locked in? Like, oh, it's not based on a book. Like usually you would like a teen drama like it was, because it was very similar to like Vampire Diaries or like Riverdale just came out. And I was like, that's a sister show. So I was like, okay, like, what do I do? So I kind of set it aside for a bit because everyone was like, oh, you should turn it into a book. And I was like, I don't really know how yet. And I worked on other projects. I filmed Red String of Fate miniseries in Russia, actually. I filmed it in Kazan over three years. Like I would go every year and film a different part.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and then I wrote three books, The Most Wanted One in the World, and the Book of Soulmates, which were like self-help books. One is about how to meet the one, like if you want a good relationship, you want to get married, what to look for, basically. And then Book of Soulmates and Red String of Fate are actually connected because Book of Soulmates came from the Red String of Fate, and it talks about different soulmate relationships you can have throughout your life, like, you know, karmic connections, twin flames. So in the book, I kind of talk back and forth between like, you can watch this film and you can also like read about what it is and like decide what was that like in your life? Like, have you met that person?
Hmm.
And, you know, different kindred spirits. Because like everybody we meet, like if you've stayed friends with somebody for a long time, they're like your kindred person, you know? So, and the third book is a manifestation planner. So it came from me being a lot productive sometimes. So people are like, oh, how do you achieve so much? And I'm like, I don't, you know, I just do. So it was kind of like manifestation journal in a sense where like, this is how I like visualize things. This is how you can do like a vision board. And also this is how you can plan things and schedule things in your calendar. So it kind of like put together two things. So those are the three before the Contenders came.
Hmm.
And now Contenders, I've been trying to publish this book for a while. You know, I would like get going with it and it was just never really the right time. And finally it was the time. Like I've been putting it on my to-do list, like my yearly to-do list. You know, I'll put
Hmm.
like 10 things to do this year, probably for the last couple of years. So it's just been, you know, it's the right time. So I decided let's turn this pilot script into a book. So it's in the fiction version, but I left out the flowery description, so it reads really fast. I don't know. You can tell me if it does or doesn't.
It does. I did read it during my time at the Manhattan Beach. Like I think maybe in an hour or so. Yeah, I think I finished it. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
it reads very well. Yeah.
Yeah, it should read like, you know, an episode of like a CW or a freeform type of show. I've been really excited to kind of like get that project going again, and hopefully we get to make a TV show out of it someday.
So how do you go from I want to write this show to actually creating a trailer and also writing a book and having a book party? what are the steps that needs to be taken to get to the book party?
you got to have an idea, right? Everything starts with an idea, and if you don't currently have an idea, just start paying attention to different things that you want to do, different things that are, you know, interesting to you. Start putting in like, you know, your phone notes. Like if an idea comes to you, like write it down and just keep doing that until you have a collection of ideas or you decide to like on a theme. And so you end up sometimes with a script and you do that and then you decide, okay, I maybe don't have the money right now to film the full episode. So let's run an Indiegogo campaign and, you know, price it all out and try a trailer. And we filmed it in a way that it kind of looks like it's a trailer from a filmed pilot, right? Like it's so cohesive that you feel like, okay, where is the actual episode, right? And I wanted to look like a first look of a show. So I definitely like looked at examples of different first looks of different TV shows, and I was like, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want it to look like. And then you put together a team, you cast, and you set a date. You end up doing that, and then you edit, and when I wrote the novel, I actually have a personal assistant who helps me. She's one of my friends in North Carolina, Catherine, and she had helped me turn the book like more into a novel form because like I asked her like, okay, this is what I'm kind of looking for. If you can help me, it'll help me then go back to it and then fill in the information. So basically, like I had it in a script form, right? So I had to go from the script to like Max, and then what did you do? To like, and then Max turns into, turns to the corner and says like, what did you do or something. So yeah, I definitely, after she had helped me, I went and like done a couple more revisions and added some stuff back into the script too, or into the novel form, because there are some things that I kind of left out of the script because it didn't really matter. Like you weren't gonna see it. But as the reader is reading, it's important to the reader to see it in the novel form. So that's interesting too. And then I published it on Amazon, and I decided, okay, I want to celebrate. Like, I don't want another milestone to go without celebrating it. So I decided, let's have a book launch, and invite my friends and have some fun, have some foods like chicken contenders.
The name, yeah. That's also pretty tasty too. Yeah, especially. I was hungry at that moment. I didn't expect there's gonna be food, so I was excited. How long did it take to make a trailer? For example, you started with an idea and then you made a trailer. What was the timeline? How long did it take?
So I started with the script, right? So I had like a 60-page pilot script, and then I turned it into a 6-page script. So I just kind of pulled things that were more interesting and kind of talked about the show. And I think the idea I had of filming the trailer, I think that was like January 2017, and we were done filming it at the beginning of that May. So January is when I got the idea. I ran the Indiegogo campaign like I think April, and while I was doing that, I also like cast my actors, had the table read, had my like UPM, then started looking for like director, producer, and all that, DP, and then we filmed like the first week of May. I think we filmed like 2.5 days. And then we were done with editing, I think, in June. So honestly, pretty quickly because it was a trailer.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty fast turnaround from the idea of making it to actually making it.
Yeah.
What was the most fun part of making this? No, let's say making this trailer. Was there any particular moment or occasion or like occurrence during making it that stood out that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, there's a couple actually. One of them was that the first day that we were like really filming, because we shot one day, it was like a one night stunt scene, the fight scene. But the day that we actually shot, so I get there and my crew doesn't really know who I am. I mean, they know my name, but like I didn't know them before. So I get there and I'm like, hey, I'm Valeria, and like basically the showrunner was saying. And the crew's like, okay, I'm wearing like this trench coat and like, kind of like messy hair and stuff like that because, we're starting early and like, I don't care. I'm not acting until later. I work alongside with them for maybe like half a day. And then I have my scenes, at the second half of the day. And so when it's time for me to act, like I get dressed, I get my hair and makeup done, and nobody saw that process. And then I come out and I'm like, well, boom, and everybody just like looked like, is this the same person? And like, I don't think they knew that I was going to be acting. Like, I don't know if they knew what I was doing on the project until then, maybe. But that was like pretty funny to me. Like, I definitely saw people like turn their heads, like, what happened? So that was fun. But also, we had some really cool people helping out with locations. We shot one of the scenes on a college campus. So we found like a friend of a friend who had like an office at a college to make it look like the high school. So that was super cool. And then also my friend Eddie, he has a house and he had this beautiful wall, like a bookshelf. And we ended up filming at his house a few scenes. So the very last scene of the trailer where you see me like turn around with the big bookshelf, that's filmed there. And also the scene, the museum scene with the painting is filmed there, and a couple of others. So it's just really cool when everybody comes together and kind of like supports the project.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're saying that you haven't paid anything for the locations for the
Oh
trailer?
no, I did.
You
I
did?
actually, this trailer was so expensive. We raised like $8,000, and I still paid out of pocket for more stuff and editing. So like everybody get paid.
If you're comfortable, let's move to this question that I asked. A moment in your life when you failed or that you considered failure that later turned in some kind of form of success. Is, if you're comfortable, would you mind sharing with us one of those moments?
Well, I studied BFA, right? I went in for graphic design, and I pretty early knew that maybe that's not what I wanted to do. I was still going to finish it because it was too far into my study to change my career. I was spending more time with people who were like in the production in school, and I was like doing modeling and, you know, maybe instead of like working through school, I was like modeling and doing like projects for free. And so it sometimes felt like a failure because there are people in my program who like they knew like I'm gonna be a graphic designer, this is where I'm gonna work, like all this. And I didn't know what my path was gonna be. Like I really didn't. I knew like I like modeling. I never saw anybody make money off of it, like personally.
Yeah.
Obviously there are like models and stuff that make money off of it, but like personally, did I know them? No. And so yeah, things in North Carolina, like you don't really get paid for like your creative work. Like I did this, you know, awesome music video, but I only like got some money. And so I wasn't sure, I was kind of like stuck in this. I'm finishing this degree. It's really stressful on one hand because like I don't know if I'm going to be doing it. I don't know if it's interesting to me. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And also, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So like I would talk to people who graduated and I would ask like, how did you know that you wanted to be this after school? Like sometimes you're not what you studied, and they would just say like, you'll figure it out. Like it'll just come to you. When I graduated, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer for magazines, for fashion magazines. I thought maybe I'll move to New York. And that didn't happen. I instead ended up moving to LA and starting my life here. It was different. Acting fell into my lap. And then I started writing and stuff. For a few years, I didn't know where I was going to end up. and I ended up not where I thought. And I like the place where I ended up. And I'm glad I didn't move to New York. So I don't know if that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect answer. Have you lived in New York?
I visited. I've spent maybe like a couple of weeks there, but not my vibe, unfortunately.
Well, if you cannot last a few weeks, then that's definitely not your vibe. Yeah, I've witnessed all the seasons of New York, and I still love it for some reason. I don't know. Sometimes I'm dreaming of going back, but the weather in LA always wins. You know? It's
what's better than the weather in LA? Maybe San Diego. maybe. Yeah. So it looks like writing has a huge importance in your life, and like pretty much every project that you start so far starts with writing. Am I right? I would say acting is my primary. The reason I write is to create projects that I can act in. So actually, every book except for the journal have turned into a pilot or something. So actually, even my first book, The Most Wanted One in the World, I published it after I had filmed this like pilot for a series called L for Love. So I wrote a few episodes of L for Love. Like it was going to be like a 20-minute dramedy about a life coach, like a love life coach who helps everybody else, but her personal life is in disarray. So, and actually the advice that I give in that pilot episode is directly connected to one of the chapters in my book. So I think it all starts with like what kind of characters do I want to play, because as a young woman in this industry, you audition for these things and you're like, I could have written better than this, and this is what's getting produced. Writing came out of the will for better roles for like, you know, kind of multicultural people like me. Because when I go into casting, it's what they want to see, right? If you're a brunette and you're Russian, you can't play Russian. That's why I ended up playing Hispanic a lot, like in Jane the Virgin. And so, you know, it's very like stereotypical still. So, and then if they see that you speak Russian on the resume, it's like, oh, then you're just Russian. You can't even speak English, basically. Like I remember going to an interview for an agent, and he saw my resume probably for the first time in my interview. And the first question he asked was, "So, do you have an O1 visa?" And I was like, "I grew up here," you know. So it's like things like that. So I was like, "No, I have to create work for myself. I have to create work for my friends." So that like running streak from when I was little kind of hit me, because if I want to continue like acting and making projects like that I want, and not just like acting in other people's projects, I need to make my own content. So that's where it actually came from. Does that answer the question?
I guess my what I wanted to actually ask, do you enjoy writing? Do you find joy in creating new characters and those new worlds?
Yeah, I really like it. It definitely, you have to like set the time for doing that and for like the discovery, because I mean, just like with anything, you have to put the time into it, right? But because writing is not just writing is rewriting and editing. You know, you write the first draft and then you work on the edit for a very long time. But I do like it. I am a part of a writers group, and, you know, it's good to have people who give you honest feedback and will tell you, like, something's not working here, and then you rework it. Yeah.
That's always very helpful. Yeah. Especially when it comes to making screenplays for that you're going to spend a lot of money to produce later. Yeah. So how do you go from, oh, I want to like find a new gig to act, or a movie or a TV show? What do you search for those projects, or do you have an agent, or like what is the balance between projects that you create yourself and then the projects that you find outside?
I have lots of agents for everything, theatrical, commercial. I think the only one I don't have currently, I mean, like, I guess like the commercial agent is kind of part of print, but I would like to find a print agent just like for modeling again. That would be cool. So I definitely have people looking for me, but I also submit on Actors Access. I'm always like looking on Instagram, like I follow different casting agencies and like they'll post, links to this casting, like do this, do that. There's sometimes will be like Facebook posts, but a lot of it is just from like knowing people, like you've already worked with somebody, so they'll think of you. But like, keeping in touch with people is really important. So you kind of like stay top of mind. And the balance is, so acting is always first. So if I book something acting wise, that always takes priority to my projects, to whatever. So, I always knew that I wanted to be an actress. So I stay true to my dream. And that's the first thing that I prioritize. So even if I'm working on something, I'll take a break. Or like, I remember a couple of years ago, I booked this commercial, but I also had like this workshop that I was doing, like a Dream Life workshop, or like vision boarding. And I was like, it was on the same day, and it was in like Miami. And I was like, I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna have to move the workshop like a week later because I just booked something. And I mean, some people might think it's unprofessional, but also if you're following your dream, then like your followers and your fans and like people who support you and your friends, that inspires them because you didn't just say no to your dream. It's gonna make you a better teacher and a better like lighthouse for them to follow their dreams. You know what I mean? So I could have like canceled my acting shoot and been like, oh, I have this thing already. But also, like, who does that serve? Who does that help if I do that? If I say no to that? That maybe it's not my real dream. And when I'm teaching, like, the dream life things, then it's like, well, you didn't follow your dream, so what are you teaching?
Nice. Let me ask you this question. Feature films versus TV shows. Which one do you think is better as a job? Let's say as an actor. And what do you think is the future of both?
Yummy question. They're different. So if it's a film, it's a little more relaxed because they usually know like they have the budget. They have the time constraints, but if they don't, they can always do like the reshoots and stuff. Whereas the TV show, you have like these 8 days to shoot everything in, and we're going to stay until we finish this day. But at the same time, the TV shows, because you're working so often with each other, you grow closer. So people are more relaxed in the way that like they know they have a stable job and all of that. Unless it's like a really crazy show. Like I've worked some crazy shows where you're like out in the heat for, 120-degree weather outside. And everyone's just like miserable. So it just depends on, I think it starts at the top. Who is the person like leading the ship of the film or the TV show? Like, but for me, I think I like films just a little bit more because they don't come as often. So, because like LA, like TV shows, like LA runs on TV shows, right? Like they shoot Monday through Friday or sometimes like, Thursday through Tuesday or something. So, you can always like be in a TV show, even if you're just like a hand model. But films don't come so often, especially like big films, because films have moved, right? Not a lot of films film in LA. So when something comes through, you get so excited. Like, I worked on the menu. So I was doubling Anya Taylor-Joy, and they were only going to film, like 3 days. Or like, yeah, anytime I was on a big film, they were only filming in LA like 1 day or 2 days because they were filming in London or somewhere. And I don't have the luxury of going to London and working there right now. But if I did, I would, because that sounds fun. Working on the whole big production of such big films. And so it's like always so exciting. Like I remember I worked one day and I got my first like golden time on this film called Jupiter Ascending. Jupiter Ascending. Do you remember with Mila Kunis?
Yeah.
And Channing Tatum?
Mm-hmm.
And of course I didn't know where I was coming into because they would use code names. And I came in and I was like, oh my God, that's Mila Kunis. I was like, I was a little starstruck, and she was so nice. And they were only filming here for one day at like Warner Brothers, and they just needed me and this other girl. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, how many people want this opportunity? And they just picked 2 people to be in the scene with her. And so when the films come, it's always very exciting. But also, it's not an all the time gig. So if you want something that's more stable and all the time, like TV show is great. And for the future, I definitely think that blockbusters are the future. Barbie is a huge blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
They earned more than $1 billion.
I know. Margot Robbie pitched it as a $1 billion movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the marketing campaign for it was amazing. Like you saw pink everywhere and you associated it with Barbie and you want to take a picture with it. And people like really caught on to like the music and the reels, and they have a great soundtrack. And yeah, like everybody got on the train, like people in the restaurants making dishes that look pink, like pink, from pink pancakes to like whatever.
Yeah, everything's pink. Yeah,
it's so genius. But I definitely think there's going to be more blockbusters, and I would love to be in them. There are, there's still indie studios, but I'm not sure what the future is going to be after the strike. Like, I feel like it's actually kind of killing the indie studios. But let's keep it alive and make our own projects, and
yeah,
they'll get picked up and stuff. And for TV shows, well, we've seen the trend from going from like 22 episodes to like 8 or 10, or sometimes even like a limited series of like 4 episodes, right? Mm-hmm. I think that'll continue. I think, and people have short attention span, so, and for me too, like it's hard to invest in a TV show if I didn't like the pilot. Yeah. Like I know some people are like, no, wait till the 5th episode. And I was like, that's 5 hours of my life. I didn't like the pilot. So
yeah, there are way too many shows right now. You have to only watch the ones that brings you joy, as Marie Kondo would say. sparks joy.
I think you're the one who told me about that book.
Have you read it?
Yes, I've been decluttering ever since. I teach decluttering too now.
Are you a certified consultant, Marie Kondo now?
No, but I very vividly believe in decluttering for.
Yeah, that's my go-to always. Like if I need to just clean something, does this bring me joy? Really? Does it really spark joy in this moment? Then yeah, let it go. The same with TV shows. Like, am I really enjoying the show? Why am I watching it? Let's just ditch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the question I ask every guest who comes, and might be surprised to you. If you were an extraterrestrial from a perfect world where everything is beautiful and organized, and now you're visiting our world with all of its issues. What would be the one thing that you'd fix?
Well, you're preaching to the choir. That's how I feel every day. One thing that I would fix is, I think, people talking to each other, not just kind of like labeling each other like you are of this faith or you are of, this belief, or like you're from this country or you're from whatever. Like, just following your intuition, like until a person did something bad to you, like why would you treat them, any different than how you would treat your friend? So I would definitely tell humans to treat each other with respect and just give people a chance. I think that's very valuable, because you never know, you never know who's going to become your best friend. Sometimes you like thought horrible things about this person and you're like, oh, I actually like them. So like why not just kind of like clean palette with every person and like just get to know them, where they're coming from.
That's beautiful answer.
From the extraterrestrial.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything at all? Anything you'd like to share, or where people can find you?
Sure. So Instagram is where I live. It's at Valeria Sweet Official is how you can find me. There's a movie so I filmed a feature film, Once in a Blue Moon, and we're in editing now. That was an interesting project because I wrote it during COVID. So it's a little bit about COVID, but it's really about this relationship of two people that is possible because of the pandemic. It takes place on film sets, like pre-pandemic, during, and kind of like post. So if you'd like to keep in touch with that one, you can go to filmonceinaBlueMoon.com or Once in a Blue Moon Film on Instagram. And you can check that out. And of course, Contenders of the Last Will is its own hashtag. Its own like at on Instagram. But besides that, I just want to say that whoever's listening to us, I hope they're realizing their potential and also thinking about their dreams. And if they're not necessarily following one right now, you can always go back to what you wanted to be as a child when you were like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old. Like, what did you like to do? Sometimes we don't know that we wanted to be an artist. Sometimes we don't know we wanted to be a doctor. But we know that there's some special skills that we were really good at, that like either our parents said like, oh, you're really good at this. Like, you're really good at building, or you're really good at painting or whatever. And pick that thing up and just think about your childhood a lot, and like about the good parts and parts that people said like good things about. Or maybe, remember things like, what did people say? Like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you can't do that. What were those things? And like, go actually do them. You probably can do them and probably really good at them. So always go back to within yourself.
Nice. And now we arrived at the final question of this interview. Obsession of the week. It could be anything. A favorite book, movie, or something random. For me, for example, this week it's a TV show Foundation on Apple TV Plus. I'm obsessed with it, and I also reading the book at the same time. And I'm just in this world of those. I don't even want to start. But what is your obsession? Something that you've been obsessed with this week.
It can be a story, right? I can tell you a story.
Absolutely.
Okay. You're hearing this here for the first time. So last night when I couldn't sleep, I remembered about the first script that I ever read, and it was in 5th grade in Russian elementary school. And it was a script called The Blue Bird, Синяя птица. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it was later made into a film apparently, but I didn't know. So one of my pastimes is to think back on my childhood and like think like about like different things to rediscover about myself. And so I remembered, I was like, wow, that's the first script that I read. And I remember it was in the literature book. So like it was a part of, you know, the school content. But of course we were never going to get to that. And so I remember reading it on my own, just like at home, and like imagining what it would look like if like I put it up as like a stage play or like a film, you know, in fifth grade. Crazy. Like, again, I didn't know that that was a thing. So I remembered about that instance, but I've never actually looked it up because I was like, I don't know if it's a part of my like childhood like imagination. I don't know if it's actually a thing. Like, I don't know if it's an actual play. So I Googled it last night when I was wide awake at 2 in the morning. And you know what the first thing comes up? So it's a 1976 film version of it, which was filmed in Russia, but it's a USSR/USA production of Lenfilm and 20th Century Fox with Elizabeth Taylor, Jane Fonda, and Ava Gardner, all filmed in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And I was like, what? Like, I could not believe what I was seeing. Like, it was, I guess, a fourth ever production of like Russia America, and has Elizabeth Taylor as like playing 4 characters or something. So that was the first thing that came up, and I don't think I saw it before I read the screenplay, but I think I might have seen it and probably just didn't know who Elizabeth Taylor or any of those were. Mm-hmm. But when I found that out, I was just like completely obsessed with like reading everything about it, like Wikipedia this, about the author. The play was originally written in French in like 1908. The first stage play of it was like, you know, in Moscow theater in 1910, and then there was like a British version. And I think first American version had like Shirley Temple. So it's so interesting because I didn't even know if this was a real play. Like, I thought I might have just imagined it, and it really is. And, you know, it kind of reminds me of The Alchemist. Mm-hmm. So if you read the book, you know, how like he goes on a adventure to figure out this treasure is at home, right? And so this play is kind of about like that. So it's about this sister and a brother who are like young, and a fairy comes to them and she says like, help me find this blue bird who will heal my granddaughter. And so she gives them this ability to see the soul of like all like animals and things, even like bread, clock, whatever. And they go on this adventure, and I will not spoil the ending for you, but it's kind of like The Alchemist. Basically, like, enjoy your present moment and enjoy like where you are and be appreciative of what you have. Yeah, apparently Stanislavski really liked this play also.
Now you got me obsessed with this. Now might become my next obsession.
you can watch it dubbed on YouTube in Russian.
Maybe, yeah. I'm definitely
but you don't go back.
I'm definitely gonna find it. I gotta get a link from you, or maybe I just find it myself and I put it in the show notes. Definitely.
1976. Yeah. Elizabeth Taylor in Russia.
That's crazy. It's like, it's just insane. Sometimes you discover things like that and then they blow your mind. You know, there's like this movie also Russian that won an Oscar or was nominated, Dersu Uzala. And it's the Russian-Japanese production, and Akira Kurosawa was directing it. And I was like, what in the universe? It's almost like Mandela effect or something. Something is like as if coming from a parallel universe. Yeah. So
what year? Do you know?
I think it's like 80s or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It's not that old either. Yeah.
Wow.
So something to check out. I can send you the link as well. And I'll put it in show notes too.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure, Valeria. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. That was always so nice.